people. And I think I just feel really proud. And yeah, it was emotional though. I mean, and exciting. I mean, they kept saying to me, this feels so different. This feels so different. You know, we're performing with no one in the theater. I'm asking them to dance so big with no one watching except for the four of us. And they did it, you know? So I'm happy. You know, the curtain is closed and they took their final bows and that was it. So watching them on stage was everything to me because I didn't know if that would ever happen this year, and it was very emotional. I cried.
I feel complete, like my senior year has been complete. Like even if I didn't get to do anything else, prom, graduation or whatnot, I still wanted to dance at Fort Hays at least one more time, be on the stage with the lights at least one more time. That's all I was hoping for from the beginning of the school year.
I'm really happy I got to do something. I really thought, I'm like, there's no way that I could.
I'm mostly proud of myself for being able to like stick to something and like do good and like be around people who are also doing good.
Dance sometimes is just made to look effortless. Like, you're not meant to see the pain. You're meant to see the beauty of it. So that's something as dancers that we pride ourselves on, of making it look effortless as much as we can.
And this is the thing about dance, is it's you on the stage. Yes, you can play a character, but it's your body and your expressivity. It takes a heck of a lot of vulnerability. And that's a big ask for young people.
Even in the midst of a pandemic that we've never seen before, even in the midst of great tragedies that we have not seen before, the students at Fort Hays, the students in Columbus, the teachers, the staff, we all still rise up.
We sit here and we're like, you know, we're saying, hey, track can be this vehicle. Coach, I want to turn to you now. You talked about the golden years, Coach Morgan. What did track do for you? What did the experience do for you? And tell us a little bit about your post-high school experiences and then what you've grown and learned maybe from some of that.
Sure. So like I said, track and field is one of those sports where there's not many opportunities past the collegiate level.
Okay.
So making it to whatever college of your choice or whatever level of collegiate competition is kind of like your plateau, unless you're the Allison Felixes and Steiner.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I always kind of noticed that if track was the sport that I was going to try to excel in, that I needed a backup plan. So my focus was always academics first. Okay. And then using the track as that vehicle to pay for school.
Right, of course.
Because I wasn't born in money.
That's right. That's all right.
Also, track, a lot of universities, if you're not at the top universities in the nation, then track also only gets partial scholarships. And then you have to prove your merit to get like work up to a full scholarship.
Okay.
So I was able to go to school on half track, half academic scholarship.
Nice.
However, I seen it as my vehicle. I knew that I couldn't just go to college and major in just anything. Like I had to major in something that would, set me up for a promising future.
Certainly.
So track was that vehicle that I used to, I majored in computer science and engineering.
Nice.
And I was supposed to take 5 years, but I took 4 because even in collegiate sports, they pay for your summer school as well.
Okay.
So I stayed on campus and trained during the summer, but I also took courses to complete my coursework in 4 years rather than 5.
Coach Anthony, you get to hang out with some special people, man. I don't know if you realize how phenomenal these 2 young women are. I don't want to steal her thunder yet. Hold on. I want to let her keep going. But I mean, wow, these are some phenomenal people you're getting to hang around. I'm sorry, go ahead. So you finished in 4.
Yeah. And from there, your track. So not to mention engineering coupled with, track meets every weekend and lifting and practice and things like that. So you have to be
lifting people when you participate in sports. Lifting is part of it. You don't have to be a weightlifter. Getting stronger is part of it. Go ahead. So you're lifting, you're doing all these things.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so you learn time management and things like that. It's just all kinds of skills that you cannot pay to learn.
Certainly.
So I
That's
always
the beauty of sports.
encourage my girls to try to compete on the next level, even if they don't think they're the best. They don't think it of themselves.
Right.
I'm not even talking track anymore. I'm talking like life.
Yeah.
You learn time management, how to prioritize.
Certainly.
Different things that you need to do. And so that's kind of what I mean by track being a vehicle. No, it wasn't my end all be all. I'm not in the Olympics. I did not have the talent to be in the Olympics, but I feel like track offered me things that I could not pay for in a college
a platform.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? For life to vault. You know what I mean? A starting block, right?
Even being here today.
Come on, I got all sorts of puns like that, Kaden. A starting block, right? Yes, indeed. No, I think that's beautiful. Your journey. I'm blessed to hear it today, right? I'm honored to hear your experiences. You even gave me a lot to think about. Just because sometimes when you've been in this a long time, like Coach, and I don't know Coach's history. I'm 25 years in education in Columbus City, and every once in a while you need to be refreshed. What you've shared today has been very refreshing. I'll share that for you. Coach, I'm going to allow you to give some quick lasting thoughts. They're giving me the signal over there that says I got to start to get ready for outro, and you're going to say your lasting piece, but we always let the current, right? We always let our future get the final word. So you'll share something here, and then I'll turn it over here to Kaden before I do the outro.
Okay, I'm going to get ready to get into my DJ voice right now so I can get it all in. I know I'm going to get to cutting a little bit.
Yes,
I can be loquacious too like her. Okay, what you said to Kim, I knew about Kim, about what she does and how good she was. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised with anything. And I know there's even more that we don't know.
Right.
Also, too, the time management thing is bigger than the clock right here, too. You have to we teach them to be prepared. We want them to be disciplined. We want them to be focused, okay? And those are not just words that we put out there. That's what something you need to be, okay? Be that. And I just want to thank God for the opportunity to coach the young ladies. And I like to thank, God for their families too.
Nice.
God, family, and then what we do, that comes in third.
There you go. I love it. All right,
definitely comes in third.
We're gonna turn it to you, Kate, and you get the last words here today before I read the outro.
That's perfectly fine with me. So I first want to say thank you to the coaches for everything for the last 2 years that I had. They've been amazing, and thank you for the production that we're going on. Where we're doing now.
Nice, okay.
And just want to say something to everyone that's listening now, or like the high schoolers that are listening now, like you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
If you start something, make sure you finish it, because 9 times out of 10, you're amazing at what you're doing. You just don't know.
I love that. That's a great way for us to end today. Steadfast. Right? Steadfast is the energy for today. I'm going to read the outro. I got another look over there. They're nice looks, but there still was another look, right? So
can I just tell you what our theme song is?
Certainly, we
What
know
it
theme
is,
songs.
we call them my girls.
My girl.
We got sunshine on a cloudy day.
About my girl.
Championship is in the month of May.
There you go.
Well,
I love that right there. And you know that I love that right there. We're gonna get to this outro here. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. Much respect to you all as our guests here this morning. Appreciate you being here. Be sure to catch all future episodes on radio WCBE 90.5. Also catch us on Spotify, Apple, or the platform you prefer to listen to your favorite podcast. Additionally, follow us on Instagram at City League Sports 614. I am your host, Vince Clarino. This is City League Sports, and we are out.
Good morning. I want to call to order the meeting of the Governance Policy and Advocacy Committee for Wednesday, March 8th. Roll call, please.
Good morning, everyone. Chair Brown.
Here.
Vice Chair Cole. Dr. Pierce. I think
Did you hear me?
Dr. Pierce on Zoom virtually?
Present. Virtually, yes. Can you hear me?
Francis Beasley. Kelsey Ellingson.
Present.
Chair Brown, we do not have a quorum.
All right. Then we can proceed as a subcommittee or something of that sort. Let's see what we can accomplish this morning. And hopefully we will get to a quorum next meeting. Or perhaps somebody will join us this morning. Approval of minutes is the next item, and we're going to skip that since we do not have a quorum and can't act on anything. We've got a number of matters for discussion. The first of which is an attendance policy revisions to policy 5200. Are you familiar with the changes?
Yes, Chair Brown, Tyree Pollard is here with us this morning. He's the Director of Attendance and worked on these changes. And I would like to turn it over to him to discuss what he's put together.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Board, we just really updated our last policies to be up to date with the new state policies. We took a couple things out, added some new language to be in alignment with the state policy. We also rescinded 5200.1 and added it into 5200. So all that is in the current document that you're seeing now. Just some of the key changes were just we added a couple other reasonable excuses. We added some language around current absenteeism, excessive absences, habitual truancy, and the whole House Bill 410 process, step by step, has all been included in this new policy. We also took it a step further to be in alignment with the state. We added language about tracking remote attendance for our school that is remote too as well. But everything in the document is in alignment with the state, and we should be good to go.
Thank you. I noticed that this one is not redlined.
Right, I was going to speak to that. The reason it's not redlined is the last adoption date for our policy was long enough ago that the changes are significant enough it would have been hard to follow. So we just started fresh with the Neola template to make sure that we captured all of the statutory and legal changes that have taken place since we last adopted. And then Tyree was able to look at it and make sure that it was aligned with what we're doing here as practice in the Columbus City Schools. So that's why it's not redlined.
And it's a longer policy. Elsie, have you had a chance to read it?
Yes, I have. Do you have
questions?
I have a couple.
Please.
So thank you. Nice to meet you. Tyree, what was your last name?
Pollard, Tyree Pollard.
Mr.
Yes.
Pollard. Thank you. I did find a couple of various typographical things. I think I can just type those up and send them, since this will be for a vote at a later date. So just flagging that you should expect that from me. I had a question, and sorry, I'll have to get through this to find my place here. Let's see here. As usual, my first question is related to how kids and families are interacting with policy on a daily basis. So at one point it says that parents or guardians are required to report the absence by 9:30. And I'm curious what methods is it parents are calling a phone line? Can they get through? Do they have to leave a message by a certain date? Just curious in practical terms what that looks like for them, and if that ensures that everyone who tries to notify the district by 9:30 can do so.
Yeah, so it's policies to have it in by 9:30, but families have up to a week to submit that information via the hotline that we have for attendance, via the hotline for the email. You can also call the school too as well. Other schools have put in different practices as far as creating a system to do electronically too as well when it comes to that.
Okay, great. I can keep going, or you can introduce.
Go ahead.
And I might need to pull out my laptop, but hopefully you have looked at this enough that you can tell me where my note is from in the document. But I noticed that there was one place where, unfortunately, it speaks to when there's a death of a parent. And it said that there's a 10-day period for the student in relation to a death of a parent, including total or partial incapacitation. But then it said, and no sibling is present. And it just made me wonder, what is the allowable grievance period for a child who's lost a parent? But maybe does it matter that there is a sibling or not? I guess that was almost sort of like a moral question, but it was the and in that statement. I found it. Did you find it?
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
And for everyone else, this is at the end of, I guess, the third to last paragraph at the end of the section on absence and excuses. It says, at the discretion of the superintendent, a student may be excused for a longer period of time than 10 days if a child's parent or guardian has recently died or become totally or partially incapacitated, and there is no older brother or sister living in home who is out of school.
I think that was probably due to this guardianship. I'm not for sure what that line is in there.
So to flip it on its head, if a student has someone, so I guess is what you're saying is, while maybe speaking to the child's mental health, it might be necessary to give them up to 10 days to be excused. If they are unsupervised at home, you therefore can't allow it. Is that what this is saying?
Yes.
Because that would make more sense. Okay, great.
Kelsey, I will follow up on the, I guess, the source of the language in this regard and get back to you. I'll try and clarify.
Thank you.
I'm not.
To speak on that a little bit
Yeah.
further. I think the intent in that, sorry, Greg Wisniewski, Director of Information Management. I think the intent in that language was talking actually about oftentimes if there is not an older sibling that can care for the child, that individual may have to be moved to another area and so forth. But if there's an older sibling that's caring for that child and they're living at home, it's not as necessarily the grieving process, but they have the capability of attending school from the same location that they were. So their transportation would still remain in place and so forth to some degree. So I think that originally that may have been some of the reason of the limitation. But as you spoke to the superintendent's discretion for attendance excusal, all of our building administrators have the right to act upon that discretion as a designee of the superintendent to excuse in individual circumstances. And of course, when we have family members that are, students that are losing family members and guardians, that is a time that the building administrator would be very much involved with the case to make sure that that student is given the proper time that's needed in order to fully prepare themselves to return to the academic environment.
I'm not sure that I understand it yet either, but what I'd like to do is give it some thought. And we're going to be coming back on this one again.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
I can keep rolling. Let's see here. And speaking of just not quite getting it, this last sentence in excessive absences, after reading this section, I just could not square what this is saying. And for everyone else catching up, it says suspensions count towards excessive absences because the definition of excessive absences does not distinguish between legitimate and not legitimate reasons for missing school. I think the reason this confused me is because this whole passage seems to speak to what is like legitimate or not. So I'm just confused on that last piece.
What section is that? Is that under the?
We're on
That's page 3.
It's under excessive absences, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the last sentence in that.
If you looked on the ODE website under their FAQs, you'd find this very language. I think this isn't a great explanation for it, but it's complicated. This area is pretty complicated. And I think essentially what it's trying to say is everything runs towards excessive absences, and kind of regardless of the reason, so that this would as well. Is that?
Yeah, in the state of Ohio, there's no gray area when it comes to whether you're at school or not. So if you're absent, you're absent. So even though you're suspended, that still counts towards that excessive absence piece as far as counting that absence.
And that, there are a lot of different numbers of hours versus days throughout this. It's
Yes.
kind of hard to track. But so then that would also, would that flow into the count for being truant as well?
No, it does not.
Okay, good, thanks.
So that's so you have the truant piece where we don't know where you're at as far as unexcused. But since it's the excessive piece, since you are suspended, we're still tracking that because we know where you're at, but you're still not at school. So you still count for that category, but it doesn't count for the whole House Bill 410 process for being truant.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I think finally on, I may be able to come back to another one. I can't understand my chicken scratch here. My last one was just to touch on the fact that there were multiple times when it mentioned reporting to the Registrar of Motor Vehicles. And I think I know the intent of that, but can you just explain what the goal, is that something that's in alignment with what the state requires, or is that at the discretion of the district?
It's in line with what the state has, but the district has discretion too.
And is the intent of, do you understand, are you aware of their intent in that? Is it to be able to get people to pull over parents as they're what's their goal with that?
I think it's to just another intervention and kind of get parent involvement for the school, another strategy. So I think that's the intent of that, to kind of flag, kind of say, hey, this is what's going on. You've been flagged at the register for your vehicle. You might want to talk to your school and see what's happening with that, as another intervention to kind of get the communication going with that family or that student.
But the goal isn't to initiate some sort of suspension of a license or anything like that?
It's more of a flag.
Okay.
See, it's more of a how do we get in contact and kind of have that intervention put in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pierce, any questions, suggestions, comments?
Chair Brown, I appreciate you for incorporating me into the discussion. I have no questions or comments right now.
All right, thank you. And I see Mr. Sankowski's on the line as well. Do you have anything?
Good morning, all. No, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I do not have anything.
All right, anything else that any of you would like to present? All right, then we will take this under advisement and work on it, work on any additional questions, and then bring it back next meeting. The next policy is 5421.01, which deals with academic grade changes. And we do have a marked up version with extensive markup.
Yes, this one was put together with the expertise of Mr. Greg Wisniewski, who's next to me, and he can speak to those changes.
Thank you.
Chair Brown, thank you. So these edits to this policy is to bring in line the policy with the current practice and the practice that's been actually occurring over the past couple of years with the district as related to academic grade changes. The policy previously spoke to certain items such as a paper form being completed and so forth, and we've digitized the process to make it more efficient, but also to create a better audit trail associated with these changes. So what you have in front of you is language that specifically identifies the systems of record and the systems of recall associated with the policy, as well as defines the requirements and the associated with grade changes for both current academic year as well as past academic year, because we have two different levels of responses because there's two different levels of risk associated with those. We see grade changes occur during the current year much more often. It could be that a student is past the grading term, but their teacher has worked with them to give them an opportunity to go back and maybe review standards and complete work, and now the grade window has closed, but they're able to request that the student's grade be changed. And you'll see in this policy that we have that taken care of at the local school level, where the lead building administrator is able to take action on those, and they, of course, have the tool rights within our student information system to be able to make that happen. You'll also see changes to language like taking the word principal out and using the words lead building administrator. And the purpose of that is that not all of our buildings are actually led by principals. We have sites that are like our career centers where there may be a director. And in order to try to align the actual titles up, we're using a more generic language that would cover many different individuals' language should they be the lead building administrator in that particular school. So this documents the process. It also calls out where the documentation of the changes needs to live. That way our colleagues in the audit team, should they need to go and review a grade change, know exactly where that is and how to get that information. That's the general gist of the changes.
Thank you. I guess my first question is whether some or much of this belongs in administrative guidelines rather than in policy. It's fairly detailed. Any thoughts?
My particular thought at this point in time was that we had the pre-existing policy that had a similar level of detail, but just wasn't accurate. So that's why we went that route. But I definitely see where it could be more generic with a guideline that supported policy. At this point, I just tried to update what was there.
I understand, and I appreciate that. Ms. Ellingson?
I'm looking at Dr. Pierce.
Dr. Pierce, you may need to leave early, is that right?
I do, but I'll stay on for a couple more minutes.
Great. Do you have any comments or suggestions or questions on this policy?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Elsie, anything?
I don't think I do have questions. I think just to pile on to your question about whether belongs in a different place, most of this is entirely over my head in terms of like systems that are interacted with, and so maybe that's because it's so technical, it may belong there. Thinking about how we write these for our audience, like parents in the community, that maybe this is for kind of inside the house a bit within the staff and professional family. My only question is whether this maintains or reduces or increases teachers' ability to go and make these changes.
Sure. So in answer to that question, it actually does, it maintains. Again, this is matching a practice that's already in place, so it's not any different. What specifically to teachers, one change in this particular language that is beneficial is that our contract with our Columbus Education Association says that teachers must be notified if an administrator is the individual that initiates a grade change. We went one step further in here by defining the type of notification, saying that it must be done in email, and that's from an audit perspective. That way there's not a conversation at any point saying, well, I mentioned to you last Thursday I was updating this grade change. I don't recall. That just puts that into paper so that everyone on both sides of the grade change know clearly what is happening if an administrator is initiating the grade change and what that grade change may be and why and so forth. So that's the only real substantial difference directly as it's related to teachers, because previously we just had to go on what the contract said, which was that they must be notified.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If I might speak to kind of both of your points about the policy versus an administrative guideline versus maybe just an internal process. This policy was something I flagged as we were looking at other policies, the action list we put together in December, because it is unique to the district. And so what that tells me is our policy provider, Neola, wouldn't be capturing updates directly to this policy. So I wanted to have it looked at to determine whether it was still accurate, it was what we were doing, whether it needed an update, whether it needed to go away. So Greg did a great job updating it to reflect what we're currently doing. I do think it's good to have this practice known to our staff and the community about what we're doing in this regard. I will say, though, that it is not a required policy, which is why it was unique probably in the first place. there is a decision point there about where we want this to live. But I think if we were to decide that it's not going to live in policy, then we would need to act to rescind the current policy because it is not accurate as we sit here.
That makes sense. Well, we've got until next meeting to give this some thought. Thank you. Finally, we've got, well, not finally, we've got policy 169.2, open meetings and sunshine law.
So I can speak to this one. This is actually one of the board's bylaws related to open meetings and the sunshine law. There was a recent change in statute that created a requirement essentially to be more specific in policy about how we're notifying our public of our meetings. So this just makes very clear where we're going to put these notices and what exactly we're going to be noticing. So it's just a cleanup related to a recent statutory change.
I recall this was the one that came by way of suggestion from OSBA. Not necessarily a statutory change that required this, but their interpretation, they thought it would be good practice.
Correct. The change came to revised code 121.22F, and it did add language that essentially made it, indicated that it would be good to have more clear language about where we're going to notice things. It's already what we do. So this is just memorializing what we're already doing. So it's not a controversial piece. It's just more of a cleanup.
Right. Does anybody have questions? Okay. And finally, we've got a list of policies for review dealing with transportation.
Yes, and I can speak to this also. A couple of times the issue of transportation policies have been raised. It was also noted on the December action list of things that we needed to have staff review. So I put this list together just to identify what policies we currently have that relate to transportation in some way, and then the related administrative guidelines. I did send this list to Rodney Stufflebean, who is over our transportation, for he and his staff to review to determine whether the policies and AGs were consistent with what we were doing and whether they saw any need for change. I have heard back just recently from them, and there's only one policy they see a need for any change, and it's minor. But I wasn't able to get that together in between hearing that and now. But I guess the news would be that from their perspective, there aren't a lot of technical changes that are required at this time. So this is really just information.
Can I say I appreciate that, and I think Chair Brown, that will be a good discussion point as our board enters into our retreat this week, to note that it's not technical changes that we need to these policies, but it is more tactical or mechanical changes that will allow us to provide effective and efficient transportation for students throughout our district and region, as we are required to provide that transportation. So again, I appreciate the due diligence of our administrators to reach out to determine, whether or not we needed to focus on those technical changes. And again, I'm encouraged by the fact that we as a board need to think critically about how the policies need to be changed, again, on a mechanical and tactical side to lead to more effective and efficient transportation.
Thank you. Thank you, and I agree. It is big picture items that we need to think about, and perhaps reconsider. And that's something that needs to be done at the board level. So thank you for your comments.
In that regard, Dr. Pierce, I will be keeping this on kind of my to-do list, watching for any of those kind of larger scale changes or direction from the board that would impact policy. So these will stay on the front burner, so to speak.
Great. Great.
Thank you all so much. I apologize, Chair Brown. I have to step away now.
Well, and we've reached the end of our meeting.
All right. Well, since we
Thank
have
you
a
very
quorum,
much
we
for
don't have to take
participating.
a vote to end. But thank you all for all your work and everything that you do. Truly appreciate it, including Ms. Kelsey Ellis. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything more from anybody? We have reached the end of our agenda. We need to do better, obviously, with respect to a quorum. So I will work on that. And,
yes.
We'll see what we can do for the next meeting.
Yeah, and Chair Brown, just let me know what I can do to be helpful in that regard.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, sir.
Without objection, we're adjourned.